My ex-wife cheated on me with my younger brother, the golden boy, the parents' favorite. And she even had a child with him. And now, after my sudden rise in career and financial success, that same disgusting family of mine is suddenly asking me for money. My family and I haven't spoken since I left home at 18. They always treated me like an outsider, while my brother was their precious little prince who could do no wrong. When they threw a party in his honor, a party that was supposed to be for me, that was the moment I finally understood I didn't belong there. I realized I never wanted to have anything to do with them again. I paid for my own college education through student loans and part-time jobs. After graduation, I moved into an apartment with a friend. I didn't keep in touch with my parents, and they didn't bother to reach out to me either. Years went by in silence. Then, last year, out of the blue, my brother texted me. He said he and our parents missed me and wanted to rebuild our relationship. At that point, I was already married, but the old resentment toward them still lived inside me. Even so, I decided to give them a chance. When we finally met, it was awkward, but they seemed genuinely sorry for what they'd done in the past. Against my better judgment, I started to believe them. I even invited them to my home. And that, I think, was my first and biggest mistake. That's where my brother met my wife. They hit it off almost immediately, and before I realized what was happening, they started an affair. She became pregnant not long after. At first, I was overjoyed. I thought the baby was mine. But my brother began showing up more and more often, acting strangely close to her. The way he touched her belly and spoke to the unborn baby made me uneasy. My wife brushed off my suspicions, saying I was overthinking things. But deep down, something didn't feel right. When she was 6 months pregnant, I finally gave in to my doubts and checked her phone while she was asleep. And that's when everything came crashing down. The messages between her and my brother confirmed my worst nightmare. The baby wasn't mine. They had been together for a long time, long before I even noticed anything. Even worse, she had never planned to tell me the truth. Their plan was to wait until the baby was born, then reveal the affair and divorce me, so that she could marry my brother and live comfortably off the alimony I would be forced to pay. The next morning, I confronted her about the messages. At first, she denied everything, but eventually she broke down and confessed. That was the end of our 2-year marriage. And of course, my parents sided with my brother and my ex-wife. All their sweet words about how both of us mattered turned out to be nothing but lies. When they publicly announced on social media that my ex and my brother were getting married, the entire family congratulated them. As if nothing terrible had happened, no one stopped to think about what they had done to me. How deeply they shattered my trust and my mind. My ex-wife lied to me for 6 whole months, making me believe that child was mine. It was unbearable. I felt like I had lost not just my wife, but also the child I thought was mine. My parents told me that everything had happened for the best, and once again refused to admit that my brother had done something cruel. Worse yet, they told me I should be happy that my brother and my ex-wife had found their happiness together, and even invited me to join them in celebrating it. That was the final straw. I erased them from my life once again. Things became even harder when the divorce began. My ex and her lawyer came up with a twisted story, claiming I had been toxic and controlling, that I forced her to quit her job and isolated her from friends. None of it was true. Leaving her job had been her own decision. But my family sided with her completely. They backed every one of her lies, saying they had stopped talking to me because of my misogynistic behavior and anger issues. Together, they built a case strong enough to cost me a lot of money. I lost more than I ever thought possible, though thankfully, the house stayed in my name. When the divorce was finally over, I didn't even care about the money anymore. I was just relieved that it was finished, that I would never have to see those people again. Thankfully, where I live, there's no waiting period for a divorce. My ex didn't contest it, so I got it over with fast. I just wanted to move on. It was painful to let go, but I threw myself into work, determined to become stronger and better, to make sure I would never be that broken again. And it worked. 2 weeks ago, I got a huge promotion, a better position, a bigger salary, and even a brand new company car. I was over the moon. To celebrate, I treated myself to dinner at one of my favorite restaurants. That's where I made a mistake. I posted about it on social media. A day or two later, my mother reached out to me, asking me to come over. I was confused. What could they possibly want from me now? We hadn't spoken since the divorce, and they had fully supported my ex-wife's lies. First, I ignored her calls. But she wouldn't stop. When calling didn't work, she actually showed up at my workplace. She refused to leave, arguing with the receptionist, making a scene. It was humiliating to get her to leave. I promised I'd visit them in a few days, so I did. When I arrived, I saw they had moved into a bigger house, apparently using the money from the divorce settlement and the child support payments. They said they wanted more space for the baby, who had been born just 3 weeks earlier. I assumed my money was also helping them pay the bills, but honestly, I didn't care. It was only a small portion of my salary now that my brother wasn't home and my ex-wife was asleep, so it was just my parents and me. I didn't bother trying to make small talk. I just waited for them to get to the point. After a few minutes of awkward silence, my father finally blurted it out. My brother had been fired from his job. The money from the alimony and the divorce was running out, and they had seen my post about the promotion. They hoped that I, the man they betrayed and humiliated, would now help them financially because, as they put it, times are tough. My parents have been retired for years, my brother was now unemployed, and my ex-wife clearly had no intention of getting a job anytime soon. Naturally, the child support payments I sent were nowhere near enough to support a family of 5, especially with a newborn baby. And I understood that perfectly well. Still, I was absolutely shocked that they even dared to come to me for money after everything they had done. First, I couldn't even find the words to respond. But then, after a moment of silence, I gathered my thoughts and decided I wasn't going to stand there and take it. I simply stood up and walked out without saying a word. When I reached the door and opened it, my brother was standing there. My parents begged me to stay and listen, but when my brother saw me, he froze. I didn't say a single word. I just kept walking. It was pouring rain outside, and my car was parked a little way down near their lawn. By the time I got there, I was completely soaked, and my mood, already terrible, somehow got even worse. Maybe this is where I acted like a jerk, because as I was digging in my pocket for my keys, my parents and my brother ran after me. They pleaded with me to help them just this one last time. This time, my brother spoke up. He had always been smug and arrogant, a product of how our parents had raised him. Seeing him humble himself and actually ask for help felt strange. I could tell it wasn't easy for him, which probably meant their situation was really that bad. But still, I snapped that I told them to leave me alone and go beg for money on the street if they were so desperate. Because honestly, some random stranger who didn't know them would probably pity them more than I ever could. After saying that, I got into my car and drove away, leaving them standing there in the rain. I won't lie. It felt good. Satisfying, even. For once in my life, I was the one walking away, not them. All my life they treated me like garbage, and now they finally felt a fraction of what I'd been through. That was 2 days ago. Now, I'm not so sure if I did the right thing. My mom hasn't stopped messaging me, and I've started to feel guilty for not helping them. I know I have money, and giving them a little wouldn't hurt me financially. But after everything they did, the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, it feels like they're just trying to use me again. So, does that make me the bad guy for refusing to help my own family after they sided with my ex during the divorce? Before we move on to the updates and find out how this whole story ended, I'd like to know what you think. Was I wrong? What should I have done in that situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Update 1. I decided not to help them. It was a difficult choice. I felt terrible for turning my back on my own family, but eventually I realized that they had done the same thing to me again and again throughout my entire life. Even during the divorce, when I needed them most, they chose to betray me. Why should I hesitate to finally do the same to them? I told my mother to stop contacting me, or I'd involve my lawyer, and that it wouldn't end well for her if she kept harassing me. Naturally, that made them furious. A few days later, my brother showed up at my house, saying he wanted to talk. He told me he was sorry for how they had treated me when we were kids, but then immediately followed that with, "There's nothing I can do about it. It's just who I am. I've always been better than you at everything, and that's why our parents favored me." Then he told me to stop acting so childish toward our parents. According to him, any normal parent would have done exactly what they did, given the circumstances. So I should grow up, stop holding grudges, and help them in their time of need instead of sitting around with my childhood trauma. I laughed right in his face. I couldn't help it. What he said was so absurd that it almost sounded like a bad joke. I told him that instead of trying to belittle me and guilt-trip me into helping, maybe he should get off his ass and find a job, instead of wasting both of our time. That clearly struck a nerve, because he started yelling. He shouted that I was just jealous. Jealous that not only our parents, but even my ex-wife, had chosen him over me. He said that by refusing to give the family money, I was being petty and vindictive that I didn't argue. I simply looked him in the eyes and said, "You're right. I am getting revenge, and there's nothing you can do about it." That pushed him over the edge. He got furious, yelling that he'd make me pay one way or another, and that I'd regret ever talking to him like that. Honestly, I didn't take him seriously. Let him threaten all he wants. It doesn't bother me. I know him too well. He's all talk and no action. I was perfectly calm about it. Update 2:3 days ago, my brother showed up again, still trying to convince me to help them. Obviously, it didn't work. Before that, my parents had already tried and failed. But this time, my ex-wife decided to call me herself that I didn't want to pick up. I knew nothing good could come from that conversation. But then I thought, if I ignored her, they'd probably just show up at my door again and waste even more of my time. So, I answered, and honestly, I couldn't believe how far people can go with their hypocrisy. She started off speaking sweetly, almost politely. She said she understood that after everything they'd done to me, I had no obligation to help. But she hoped I could rise above it and show that I was the bigger person. She tried to appeal to my sympathy, saying that my parents had raised me with so much love and sacrifice, and that she had done her best to be a good wife. Yeah, sure. If we just ignore the part where my parents never actually cared about me and always favored my brother, and where she cheated on me with that same brother. So, no. Her words didn't move me at all that I told her that I did feel sorry for them, but that I was already wasting enough money every month paying her alimony she didn't deserve in the first place. She betrayed me, yet somehow managed to come out of the divorce as the victim, all because my family lied for her and made me look like the bad guy. She started crying on the phone, accusing me of being selfish and heartless, which was almost laughable, considering everything she'd done. When I still refused to help, she snapped. She said my brother had been right about me, that I was cold, bitter, and cruel, and that I was leaving her no choice but to take me back to court. She threatened to demand higher alimony and drag me through the same humiliation all over again. Honestly, I'd love to see them try. The first time around, I was emotionally drained, too broken to fight back or prove that all their accusations were lies. But now I'm stronger, calmer, and ready for whatever they throw at me. I was never toxic or controlling, no matter what they claimed. She had absolutely no excuse for what she did. She didn't deserve a single cent from that divorce. But back then, I didn't care. I just wanted it all to be over, no matter the financial losses. This time, though, I was ready to fight. I was determined to make my family learn a lesson they would never forget. Update 3. Unexpectedly, and almost unbelievably, my ex-wife actually kept her word and took me to court, demanding an increase in alimony, citing my recent promotion and higher income. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I reached out to our mutual friends and told them everything, the real story of what had happened. Most of them only knew that we had divorced, but not why. When they heard the truth, they were shocked. I asked if they'd be willing to testify on my behalf if the case went to trial, and to my relief, they agreed without hesitation that I also told my lawyer that I wanted to fight not just against the increase, but to eliminate the alimony entirely. She didn't deserve a single payment. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly, gathering every bit of evidence I could. Proof that my parents and brother had always treated me as less than them, that they were now targeting me only because of the money I earned after my promotion. I was done with those parasites. I was ready to cut them out of my life for good. I even managed to convince several cousins, people who had seen firsthand how I was treated as the outcast in my own family, to testify in my favor. Even though we'd never been particularly close, they agreed to help. That My lawyer was impressed by the case we'd built. He said it was nearly airtight, and that we had a strong chance of having the alimony completely revoked. Everyone already knew she had cheated on me, but the story she told, the one that made me look like the villain and my brother like the hero who saved her, had been a complete lie. The first time, I was too emotionally broken to fight. But now I was ready to take back my dignity, and I did. When the hearing came, I presented several video statements from friends and relatives who confirmed everything, that my parents and brother had lied about me, that I was never the kind of man they tried to paint me as. I think my family expected things to go as easily for them as before. But this time, I wasn't the same man. Honestly, going through all of this changed me. I became stronger, calmer, more resilient. And yesterday, it became official. In light of the new evidence, the court ruled that I no longer have to pay my ex-wife any alimony. That I don't think I've ever felt so happy in my entire life. It was incredibly satisfying to watch those smug smiles vanish from my family's faces. My ex-wife looked like she was about to burst into tears, but this time, I didn't care. Not one bit. That I was just relieved. Relieved that it was finally, truly over. On my way home, I thought I'd celebrate, order something nice to eat, put on a movie, and enjoy a peaceful evening for the first time in years. But of course, my family couldn't even let me have that small piece of happiness. When I was just a few meters from my house, I noticed a car parked outside, my brother's car. I was confused but kept walking anyway. And then I saw them. My entire family, standing right there at my doorstep, blocking my way. I froze for a second, not knowing what to say. Then I decided to pretend I wasn't bothered at all. I told them to get off my property unless they wanted me to call the police. That's when my father started talking. He said I should be ashamed of myself, that I had no sense of family responsibility, and that I had betrayed them when they needed me the most. When he finally finished his lecture, I didn't say a single word. I refused to engage in any kind of conversation. I just stood there silently, staring at them. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. They wanted to provoke me, to make me lose control, to push me into saying or doing something stupid that they could later use against me. But I wasn't going to fall for that. Not anymore. My silence clearly drove them crazy. My mother started yelling that I should show respect to my father and answer him, but I kept my mouth shut. The longer I stayed quiet, the more agitated they became. It was obvious they were expecting a heated argument, a scene, and when they didn't get it, it only made them angrier. Then, suddenly, my brother snapped. He grabbed me by the collar and tried to punch me, but my father managed to pull him back just in time. My brother started screaming, calling me a jealous loser who would never achieve anything in life. Honestly, it was almost funny. Hearing that from someone who's unemployed, still living with our parents, and constantly begging me for money. I told them one last time, they'd better leave, or I would call the police for real. Considering how broke they were, getting arrested would only make their situation worse. So, finally, with gritted teeth, they left. Of course, my mother couldn't resist one last attempt to guilt trip me. She tried to shame me again and demand money, but that didn't work either. A few seconds later, they were gone. It's been almost 24 hours since that happened. They haven't tried to contact me again, and honestly, I hope it stays that way. No more drama. No more manipulation. Just peace. Thank you for listening to my story until the end. What do you think about all of this? Personally, I think it's a fitting conclusion, but it's also clear that the author has deep psychological scars caused by his parents and his ex-wife. Otherwise, his ex would never have managed to get alimony in the first place. But the most surprising part for me wasn't even that. It was the fact that he had to prove he wasn't an abuser. Where I live, if the child isn't yours, that's it. No alimony. End of story. But, as I later found out, in many countries, spousal support can still be required even after a divorce, and even when there are no children involved, especially if one partner is financially struggling while the other earns. Significantly more. That's the case in most U.S. states, as well as in Canada, the UK, Australia, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Sweden, and even South Africa. So, in a way, we're lucky, at least from a man's perspective. Anyway, let me know what you think about this story in the comments.